really annoying whenever you've accidentally spent on the wrong card, or I get to the end of the month and I'm a little bit short of cash and I wish I could have changed my mind on where I spent my money in the previous part of the month.
Today I'm joined by Aimee Ruddy, who is a Senior Product Manager at the UK card aggregation service Curve. Recently, the firm have made two pretty substantial announcements, one around their US expansion with a new office, I believe, in Brooklyn, and then the other around becoming available within Apple Pay, which is now available to users throughout most of Europe. We're going to talk about this new development as well as some of their core functionality. So Aimee, thank you very much for coming on today. How are you? Are you okay?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. Pleasure being here.
Great. So first of all, on you, your sort of introduction to product, how did you get here? Where have you been before Curve?
Yep. Yeah, so I guess I'm not the typical product manager. I actually started out working, I did a law degree and a French law degree.
Oh, right.
Always kind of planned on going into the legal system and then kind of after coming back from my year in France, studying French law, I needed a job and ended up working for Vodafone in their retail stores.
Okay.
And it kind of progressed into joining their graduate program. And I was really, really fortunate to have an awesome mentor at that point in time in my career who kind of said to me, what do you really enjoy doing about your job? And I kind of said, the best days that I ever have at work are the ones where something happens and you have to problem solve really quickly and really get to the root of what's happening and come up with a solution and kind of deliver that solution to solve a problem. And he said, that sounds like product management. You should go and look at product management. And I was very lucky. I got my first job in Vodafone, worked there as a digital product manager, and really fell in love with the art of product management, really getting to grips with what the user problem actually is, really understanding the metrics that were driving that and coming up with solutions that were very, very user focused and really solve that end user problem, and actually obviously building that out and delivering that. And there's nothing more powerful than seeing that product in customers' hands. Sure. So yeah, I've worked in product management for a few years now. My previous role prior to Curve, I was actually working at Deliveroo, leading their consumer experience product team. People may be familiar with things like the tracking experience and the self-help experience that you have through there. That was my product area and space. And I joined Curve about 5 months ago now. I'm really, really excited about the kind of journey and mission that they're on and the products that they've built, which I think are really awesome and really customer focused, and that's what drove me to Curve. Great.
And on Curve, for those who are uninitiated, what are the companies setting out to do?
Yeah, so Curve is kind of a simple solution to essentially enable you to consolidate all your credit cards and debit cards into one through a smart app and a single card, essentially. And we're really on a mission to simplify and unify the way that people spend, send, see and save their money. And as part of that, we also look to really unlock key kind of user problem spaces. So features like the go back in time feature, which enables people to kind of move their money and their spend that they've made within the last 14 days to another card, are really features that unlock that only Curve can deliver to those customers as well. So that's why I joined, and that's why I'm super excited by the mission that we're on.
Great. And so what is the sort of makeup of the teams at Curve at the minute?
Yeah, so we're kind of fully embedded product teams, as you might be familiar with. We have kind of designers within teams, data scientists really looking at what metrics are important for the business and how we actually drive those. We also have user research function within the team, and then obviously we have engineers from both iOS, Android, and back-end engineers as well.
Okay, and I guess they form little squads, right?
Absolutely, yes.
What's the focus of those individual teams usually?
Yeah, so we have a couple of different kind of feature teams. There's 4 of us at the moment in total. One that's focused around the new Curve Send product that we launched just before Christmas. We have a kind of strategic partnership team that we have as well. And then we have my team, which I lead, which is kind of our growth team working across the entire R funnel. So we're really the team that kind of look at and focus on where our kind of biggest opportunities are to kind of grow our customer base through acquisition and activation, and then also looking at how we can retain those users and drive revenue from those users as well. And then the final kind of product team that we have is our automation team. So they're looking at all of our processes that we have at the moment internally and our CX team and trying to make sure that they're able to give the best end user experience as well. And that's one of the key focuses that we have for this year is how do we actually scale up our customer care team and enable them to give a really, really great user experience as well whenever somebody needs support.
That's interesting. So you've got this Apple sort of pay feature, which we're going to talk a little bit about today.
Yep.
So could you tell us a little bit to begin with about how that came about and sort of what the ambition is there with those guys?
Yeah, so Apple is a really exciting partnership for us. It's something that we've been trying to bring to our users for a while, and something that's been really, really heavily requested by our users. It's constantly the one that everybody's been talking about for the last kind of 18 months or so. Can you please bring Apple Pay? We really want Apple Pay. We've been working on that partnership for a number of months now, and finally managed to bring it to our users last month, and we've been lucky that we've actually been able to launch that immediately across the entirety of Europe. So it's available to all of our customer bases throughout Europe and the UK at the moment.
Very cool. Can you talk us sort of like about the US ambition? So you've made a pretty good start over here in Europe and then sort of going over to Brooklyn and things like that?
Yeah.
Is that something you personally will be able to go to Brooklyn, do you think?
I'm very much looking forward to it, yes.
Great.
Absolutely. As soon as the announcement of the Brooklyn office came out, I was very, very excited because we're right down at Dumbo, and it's one of my favourite places to grab coffee in New York. So I'm very excited about where that office is located. Couldn't be a better location, really. We have big ambitions for the US. We really want to launch there later this year, hopefully towards kind of fall, the end of the year. And we're really looking to bring some of the unique features that Curve can offer to customers to our customer base in the US, like all your cards in one and consolidate, and that is going to be really, really key in that market. And obviously they don't have the same contactless isn't as prevalent in the US as what it is in Europe. So we really think that actually enabling that across all of people's kind of debit and credit cards is going to be really key for that market as well. Okay. We're looking to grow out a product team and an engineering team there as well. We know that there'll be specific demands from the US market which might be unique from the UK and Europe, and we very much want to set ourselves up to succeed and to be able to answer customer needs out there as well. So we're going to build out a product team there as well.
And that would be sort of the core function of this product team, is to sort of figure out what those user needs are and go from there. Would you expect them to be different sort of in terms of would you expect the product to maybe look and feel different as a result of being over there?
I think what we really want to do is leverage what we have here and what we know works really well in the markets here, and bring as much of the core functionality that we have built here across to there as well. What we may find is that as we go there and as we kind of test with users and kind of understand user needs, that actually there are some functionalities that we need to build out there, which may also be very important for our markets over here as well. So we really see it as a cross collaboration between those two sets of teams as well.
Got you.
But with the US focused.
Sounds great. So we'll kick off by looking at the Apple Pay feature. So just to caveat this is included in the sort of the older version of the Curve designs. So this is due for an update, sort of a reskin, I guess.
Yeah, we're working on updating our kind of design to our new branding at the moment. Our iOS app is not in the new designs yet, but our Android is in the new design. So
we'll see the Androids
exactly
shortly. All right, cool. So we'll just start now. Cool. So first of all, the sort of Curve logo here, and then we're going into the account, and then from here we're going to be able to sort of first of all see the Apple Pay sort of badge, which I guess is issued under. I've seen that quite commonly distributed. I guess it's part of their design language, their component libraries, and then adding that card to the wallet includes sort of name and card number details there. And there we've got a nice message, say we've got it, and there is on pay. And as you said, this is going to be great for allowing people to sort of very easily use their mobiles in that context. Yeah,
it's really interesting seeing some of the reactions since we've gone live with this feature. It's been really quite interesting to watch, like people in some markets where, like I said, contactless isn't as prevalent, to kind of say, amazing, and now all my cards are contactless overnight and I can use them all with Apple Pay overnight. So it's been really, it's been one of the best features in terms of just watching the instant reaction from customers. And we actually, we launched the feature and obviously spoke spoke about it. But we didn't do any kind of push to our existing user base for a couple of days, and it was just amazing just to see the numbers grow, like even without that, organically.
Really? Okay.
Just
So they just
from people
noticed the
talking
feature.
about it. Yeah, exactly. And then obviously we got that kind of second wind whenever we actually spoke to people and got people coming back onto the platform as much as anything else actually through that feature. So
Cool.
yeah, it's like I said, was very, very heavily requested by customers, and one that we really knew was important to deliver to them as well.
Yeah, and that involved obviously a partnership or some sort of relationship with Apple. How did that sort of come about? How does it work from both your ends?
Yeah, so I mean, we've reached out to Apple a while ago to kind of understand how we could enable this for our customers, knowing that it was a very heavily requested feature. And we've been building that relationship with them over the past number of months. We've had a great kind of partnership with them, and they've been with us every step of the way to kind of test everything, and kind of we had kind of internal tests on that as well before we went live, obviously, to customers, and they've been very supportive of us throughout that entire process. So.
Yeah, and I guess you'd have to satisfy some of their own internal requirements and things like that. Would you?
Yeah, absolutely. So one of the things that we knew was really key to us whenever we brought this to market was that we obviously wanted to enable customers to be able to kind of push provision immediately from the app, as well as obviously the standard Apple flow, so where a customer can take a picture of their card through the Apple Wallet flow as well.
Yeah, sure.
So we knew we wanted to make it available immediately within the app, and we also built things like a kind of takeover screen on iOS to let people know that that's actually available for them to use there as well.
Okay.
So we had a number of different entry points for users to kind of try and highlight them and make it prevalent within the user journey as well. And one of the features that we're currently working on is how do we actually enable that from the start. So we're
as
very
part of the onboarding flow, or
exactly. So we want to essentially have users able to spend in less than a minute. So from sign up to spend in less than a minute is our kind of ambition and what we're trying to work on right now. So we'll have that kind of digital first integration and enable people to push provision from that onboarding journey as well.
Yeah, for sure.
Exciting next steps.
Yeah, absolutely. So sort of technically working with Apple on this sort of thing, how do you sort of overcome any technical hurdles? I know, for example, that people have come on this show today and talked about when they've been discussing sort of matters with the FCA or with FSCS or whatever, that they have sort of been held to sort of their regulatory requirements and standards. But they've actually found it really helpful in order to make sure that there's quite a lot of rigor involved in their processes in terms of testing and in terms of sort of making sure that the tech's up to scratch.
Yeah.
Was there anything in terms of the technical elements of getting involved with Apple that was difficult? Or?
Yeah, I mean, we worked really closely with Apple and also obviously MasterCard, our partners as well, on the Apple Pay integration. And they were there to kind of guide us through all of these different steps and all of these different processes. And there was a lot of kind of, with every feature that we launch, we have a lot of kind of rigor and testing that goes through the process. And we always kind of released our own kind of internal beta, our employee beta first, and test that it's actually working. And we encourage people to go out and spend as much as possible during those time periods so that we actually get a really good understanding of how the product's working.
Yeah.
And then obviously our standard kind of release process is that we release to a beta program of users first. Then with Apple, we obviously immediately went out to made it available to everyone.
Really?
Because we'd had a number of months of testing internally first. Yeah.
Still, it's always very frightening, I think, when you go from very kind of internally just to big bang release sort of thing.
Yeah.
Is there any hesitation there or any?
I mean, ultimately, we had great confidence because of the level of testing that we'd already been through. Because of the level of testing that we'd already been through, we kind of had good confidence in the product feature and that it was working the way that we wanted it to.
Yeah.
So we were pretty confident whenever we went out to the market with it. And like I said, we kind of had that two-phased approach almost, because we delayed our notifications to our existing customer base as well and kind of let it grow organically through our users and kind of let them self-discover that as much as anything else.
Cool. And as we mentioned a little bit earlier on, when we were actually looking at the journey, there was a sort of like the design components and things like that. Did you find there were sort of requirements from Apple that you know in terms of actually implementing designs onto the sort of the UI of your own product? Did you find that they had specifications from that regard?
Yeah, so they have standard components that they want people to use, and obviously it's a back and forth collaboration with them to kind of understand exactly where it's going to sit within our app, and does that make sense from a user journey. Obviously, they have a great product as well, and a really, really great product focus, which is why we're quite well aligned in that space. So they were very keen to kind of see and approve those user journeys as much as anything else. What's been really interesting for us to learn is obviously when we first thought and designed our kind of existing Curve card, we didn't really see it sitting in a wallet space, a digital wallet that is, and now that we've integrated it within Apple Pay, it's really interesting to kind of see how that sits alongside other cards. And it's something that we're kind of learning ourselves in this process as well, on what should the next iteration of the Curve card look like, and how will that sit within those kind of digital wallet spaces as well.
Must be interesting actually seeing sort of like your card, which does a particular job for aggregating maybe a load of different cards and doing that sort of thing, and then suddenly it's one of those others within the Apple Wallet. So, but it looks like a really slick design. Like the metal card, for example, that we just saw was a really nicely designed product. It's a nice sort of like visual trope that's being quite nicely used.
We spent a lot of time thinking about like how we actually want people to feel whenever they have their Curve card and whenever they bring it out and kind of are using it to spend. And there's a lot of kind of design thought that goes into like how do we actually want people to feel when using that card. So that's something that we're really proud of and want to kind of continue in different iterations of the card as well.
Very cool. So for me, the next feature that we're going to look at is one of the sort of the core parts of the product. We're going to sort of walk through the go back in time feature. See on this video an HSBC credit card. We click on the feature and then move that payment over to here. And this little flux capacitor appears and changes quite nicely into the other card. So that's sort of the first thing that struck me when we checked out Curve. Obviously, on the Pulse platform, we review sort of user journeys and sort of that sort of thing, and it was quite novel in the sense of we'd never seen it done before. And I can remember your CEO talking about it at the time, and a lot of people being very excited by the sort of the innovation that was being sort of dealt with here. So why is this so key? You know, this sort of function from your perspective. What kind of core user problem does it solve for people?
Yeah, so I'm very excited about this feature as well. It's one of the main reasons why I thought, oh my goodness, this company's actually doing something really cool. Like this is one of the features, I guess, that you can get really only on Curve, and it's because we are the kind of aggregator of multiple different cards, payment cards into one. So because we actually have those within one wallet space, we can offer this kind of unique feature to users. And what we find from people whenever they had multiple cards on the account was that they were saying to us, oh, it's really annoying whenever you've accidentally spent on the wrong card, or I get to the end of the month and I'm a little bit short of cash and I wish I could have like changed my mind on where I spent my money in the previous part of the month. So it was really that kind of core use case and what people were kind of talking about that made us think, well, is there a way? Wouldn't it be magical if you could just go back in time and actually like change your mind on how you on where you spent your money? This is kind of one of the really interesting and fun parts about working at Curve, is like you're really constantly challenged with like, just because it doesn't exist today, does that mean that that's actually impossible, or could we enable that for users? And so that was kind of the core thinking, is like how do we bring that kind of magical experience to users, which is why you see things like the flux capacitor in the animation. And how can we actually enable users to make those decisions and be in control of their finances and essentially move those transactions from one spending card to another spending card later in the month. So it enables users to move their a transaction from one card to another that has happened in the last 14 days.
It's quite imaginative in the sense of discovery and the sort of design of it. Do you have any sort of insight into how it was built and sort of how any problems that were sort of found were sort of dealt with at the time?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the uniqueness of this feature is the kind of discoverability and the kind of the being able to explain this in a really simple way to a user. So it's really easy for me to sit here and talk to you about it and tell you what the feature does. But the design challenges of actually communicating that within a very small space is quite challenging.
Sure.
So that was definitely one of the key focuses of like, how do we make this really, really simple and really resonate with users? And yeah, like when we were going through the entire process, one of the key things to think about was like, how do we actually make this resonate with users and make it fit within a user flow that makes sense to the user. And that was kind of probably the most challenging part about the entire the product build, because the feature in itself is it's relatively simple on the front end, but it's the design and the kind of the UX of that is the challenging part.
Sure.
So yeah, I think when we look at kind of the data behind the use of that feature, like we know that it's one of those features that really, really engages users, and people who go through that process, we know are more likely to kind of tell people about us and recommend us to friends and refer other users as well. So
sure. And I think one of the interesting parts about this feature is when you have a very difficult sort of thing to try and explain, as you just talked about, visually or maybe through the UX, then leaning on sort of pre-existing tropes or sort of cultural touchstones is quite an interesting way of getting around that problem. Like the fact that there is a flux capacitor and it's about going back in time cannot be an accident. But you know, for example, the ability to sort of leverage that sort of understanding of what, you know, of that film from the 80s, which I'm sure everyone is familiar with, is obviously a useful tool for being able to deliver that message.
Yeah, exactly. And that's kind of like really key and into like what we want people to feel whenever they're going through this process is like, actually, this is like something really, really magical, and it is something that is like really powerful for users as well.
Absolutely. Like there's a lot of mad scientists in the Curve offices just you know, pulling levers. Cool. So I guess we touched on this before, but maybe this is something which, you know, we can develop on. But is this going to be a part of the US product in the sort of initial sense?
We absolutely want it to be yes, is the answer to that. We're still figuring out exactly what the US product will be that we take to market, and a lot of that is still being worked out in more detail, but absolutely we want to bring this to the US market. It's one of our core features. Exactly, and the US market is great for this. Like, they have more cards in general than what we have here in the UK and Europe, and I actually think that this is one of the features that can really help us to set ourselves apart in the US market as well. So yes.
Especially with a market with so many cards, you know, like for example. So how does this relate in any way, if it does, to the sort of the app, the Apple sort of functionality that we discussed a little bit earlier? Is there an interconnectedness between the two features?
And not so much interconnectedness, but like what we've seen since we've kind of released Apple Pay and enabling Apple Pay is that obviously more people are adding more cards because they want to be able to use those cards with Apple Pay, and maybe that bank doesn't necessarily have that integration. So what we're actually seeing is kind of more use case, if you want, for GBIT, because actually now people have more cards on the platform because of this feature, and that enables and empowers them more to use these type of features that really are unique to Curve.
Yeah. And just for clarity there, GBIT is going back in time. That's the feature.
Sorry,
name, right? That's okay.
Internal naming conventions.
But okay, that's really interesting. So it sort of does the same, sort of like using Curve as a conduit through which to go to Apple Pay and to be able to use that. That's quite a nice use case for that. In terms of leveraging that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Great. So we're going to take a look at another feature, which is the cache feature. Bear with me 1 minute. Okay, when you're ready. And this is in the, again, should have highlighted this. This is in the new sort of Android design sort of interface. We can see sort of different retailers added to the user's card, and then a cashback offering there. So we can select to pay on this cash card, and then we can receive sort of via these radio buttons a series of different notifications, things like that. And there's the list. Your former employer amongst them.
Use it often in our designs.
Cool. So that's the sort of this cache feature. Do you want to talk us through how this works? What's the key kind of offering here?
Yeah, sure. We offer a kind of different cashback offerings depending on what tier obviously the user's on. So starting on our free tier, our blue tier, we offer the user to select their own cashback merchants. So they can select 3 cashback merchants that they can receive 1% cashback for 90 days after joining. and then right up to our kind of premium offering, which we offer on Curve Metal, which is that you can select 6 merchants of your own choice that you get cash back for, and it's 1% cash back for the duration of your time with us.
Yeah.
So it's unlimited.
Okay, and sort of how did you decide which brands to include? You know, you touched on there that you use Deliveroo for some of the designs, but you know, was there a sort of a list of brands according to sort of the types of users that you have, or would you find that you just putting everything in there and then letting them figure it out?
Yeah, so we kind of did this very much from a user perspective. So we started to look at the data for actually who are our users actually spending money with, and then how can we add value through cashback for those users. So we curated a list essentially of merchants that our users were already spending money with, and then enabled this offering for those merchants.
Great.
And it's not a definitive list. We add to those people, to those merchants all the time, as well as we kind of see our user base grow and potentially change, and our spending habits of our users change. We change the list of merchants that we have as well.
Okay, and the 1% sort of the cashback rate. So how did that come about? Is that sort of a market-based rate? What's the sort of financial mechanics behind that?
Yeah, so it's kind of it's driven by 2 aspects, I guess. One is that actually 1% resonated quite well with customers. It was something that was relatively easy for them to understand, 1% of their spending. And the second thing is obviously the kind of commercials behind it made sense as well. And when we looked at other competitors out there in the market, we found that actually being able to, very few actually enable you to kind of select who you want your merchants to be. They kind of are very much driven by maybe the banks selecting which merchants you want and kind of pushing those to, whereas we're very much putting this kind of control in the hands of our users and enabling them to select which merchants they want to be using.
Sure.
And yeah, that it was a balance of both kind of the user experience and also the commercials behind it as well.
Okay, and then sort of, is that something that typically the merchants would sort of foot this 1%, or would this come via Curve, or how does that work?
Yeah, so at the moment, the way that we kind of wanted to remain in control of this here, and so actually it's completely driven by Curve. Okay. We didn't want to get, when we first launched this product, we wanted to be very much driven by our actual customer base and delivering value to them.
Okay.
Whereas when you kind of move to a merchant, then you're kind of more pushing people's behaviours and changing that. So
yeah,
we really
wanted
to
their own interest.
Yeah, exactly. So we really wanted to focus on how do we deliver value to our customers, and the best way to do that was to remain in control ourselves.
Okay, cool. And the sort of like the branding images that we've seen and that kind of thing, I guess we've seen quite a lot of people use sort of third parties for things like transaction sort of brands, sort of like all that sort of data that goes into these lists. Is this the same sort of instance as that, or?
Actually, we're not using a third party for it. We're doing it ourselves at the moment. I mean, as we kind of look to kind of globally expand, that model may not work in the best way possible. Like we're looking at our cashback offering that we have in Europe at the moment, because one of the things that we want to, and another very requested feature, is to bring kind of Curve Metal to Europe, and something that we're looking at. And as part of that kind of proposition, we also want to make sure that they're getting the right value from their cashback offering, because that's a core part of our Metal offering. And in order to do that, we kind of need to look and revisit who are our third parties and merchants that we're offering there, and should we be using a third party, and are they better to help us in those journeys? So it's an iterative process, and we'll figure things out.
Yeah, and there are sort of, I guess, brands out there that do that for new companies, like I guess Snowflake would be one, and there's others. So there are services out there which can help with that. So in terms of the sort of like the merchants and how that kind of sort of transaction data comes in, and that sort of exchange between a merchant and you, how does that work? Is that sort of normal, sort of within the normal kind of confines of your payment journey? So
yeah, absolutely. So we essentially look at where the transactions are happening and apply the cashback ourselves.
Okay.
And that gives us the flexibility to be able to add merchants quite quickly as we see kind of user behavior changing. And like I said, if we wanted to expand and maybe have better offerings in certain markets as we want to kind of grow our user base as well, we can actually take action quite quickly on that as well.
Great, cool. So that sort of wraps up the sort of the feature sets. In terms of big plans, obviously there's 2 quite big releases already very early on in the year, but anything big for you guys, and maybe for you in particular over the course of the year that you're excited about? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, we touched on one of them already. I think the US launch is going to be super exciting for us.
Sure.
I'm very excited to see how that plays out and to be part of that over the next number of months. And I think like what I'm really excited about is how do we really go deeper with our existing users. So we've kind of touched upon cashback and how we're working on making that better. I've kind of spoken a little bit about bringing metal to Europe as well, which we know is super important for our users. And I really want to see us, I'm really excited to see us kind of develop our kind of loyalty and proposition as we go forward into the rest of 2020.
Great, sounds brilliant. And finally, for any of those sort of, if you're a BA or a product analyst or a product manager within a big bank or a small fintech, what's the key nugget for you about product?
I think just being really close to the user. I think always start with your customer. What problem are you trying to solve for them, and really keep them at the heart and the focus of it. And as you kind of start to design and to think through how to solve that problem, be really clear and straightforward in terms of like any assumptions that you're making along the way, because it's very easy to bake assumptions based on like your own biases into your kind of product. And I think it's very important that you kind of call those out early on. So stay focused on the customer and call out any biases that you have and assumptions that you have along the way.
Very cool. Awesome. That's it for today then. Thank you very much for tuning in. Stop by next week where we'll be talking about other sort of journeys and get some more insights on those. If you want to see a little bit more of 11FS Pulse, the product which underpins everything we're doing here on Homescreen, go to pulse.11fs.com where you can request a demo. If you've got any questions about the product or want to suggest a journey for us to include on this show or the platform, hit us up pulse@11fs.com or find us on Twitter, as I mentioned before, @11fspulse. Aimee, if anyone wants to find out more about you or Curve or what's going to be happening over the next few sort of months, where do they go?
So we actually have a blog where you can actually find out that information at the Discover Curve blog and also at curve.com.
Great. We'll see you next week. Thanks very much.